What about that education in sales? How has that echoed in life for you?
I wasn't focusing on the little thing. They don't talk about the path it takes to get there.
You can't teach the drive and the desire. I think that gets overlooked a lot in sales management.
The perfectionistic mindset was stopping me from moving forward.
What kind of psychology or emotional strain did that put on you? How are you using that right now, that mindset?
Your capacity is really built in training.
What up, D2D world? JP Arlie here. I got a really special guest today, somebody I've known for a long time. In fact, I think I might have been your first boss. I have Olympic silver medalist, world champion bobsledder, Lauren Gibbs with me. Lauren, how are you?
Talking to you is always a good day. So I'm doing
That's
great.
Right.
Yeah.
I still have some fantastic photos when you would come to Utah to train. You'd come by the house, and so my phone reminds me of those. And you know, my kids know you as the bobsledder. They don't know anything about our past, but they just know those photos. So a little background about Lauren, and I'll have you kind of share a little bit more. What we're trying to do with D2D Experts is provide value on this podcast to those of you who are in the industry, grinding, working hard, and hearing from people that were in the industry that have used that experience to go after other passions in life. And you've chased a lot of passions, and so we're going to talk about those. But I met you long time ago, I think right before your freshman year in college, in the Cutco world, where most people know where I got my start. And you were a stone cold slayer through that. You were a college athlete at Brown University. And when you graduated, you obviously worked for us in management for a while, and you got into the ADT alarm sales world. So I'll pause there a little bit, because I think the ADT piece really resonates. I mean, thousands of homes you went in with Cutco were valuable, but learning that kind of how to translate what we teach those high school, college age kids into the kind of corporate world of alarm sales. So looking back on that past, let's talk about those transactions. Right off the top of your head, what's the first thing you think about when you think about the days at ADT and selling alarms?
The model sales call.
The model sales call?
Yeah, I think about being out in the field with my reps. I think about working with people who are doing a commission-only job, who are adults and have families to feed, mortgages to pay, and hopes and aspirations. I think about selling a product that is meant to protect people and how important it is to get it right. Because if you install an alarm system, it doesn't work, you don't get it right, then you have this false sense of security. And so that, it can be a big weight on your shoulders. And I just think about, finding out if I was as good as Cutco made me feel like I was, and it's like, when we worked at Cutco, we had a great product, a great program, and great people. And I'm not saying ADT doesn't have that, but in other organizations, I've come to learn that, like, yeah, I'm good, but I'm not better than a great product, a great program, and great people.
Now, how funny is that, right? When you think about it, like, you went to a very prestigious private high school. You went to Brown University. I think you got your master's from Pepperdine or some advanced degree at Pepperdine. And you're judging yourself based on, am I as good as Cutco? Right? So like, right? But there's
best
value
education
there.
You can get is sales. Best
right.
education you can have is sales.
And the value when it comes about product and product belief, I think a product like a kitchen knife at Cutco is binary, right? It's either the best or it isn't. Where when you get products like, alarms or solar or pest or roofing, it can be a little bit arbitrary on the service you provide and the value that the customer sees. What about, we're going to talk about your Olympic journey and your world championship journey and what you're doing right now, obviously, but what about that education in sales has echoed post, right? You're obviously not doing much of that now, but what that education in those, I guess probably first 7 to 8 years of your career, how has that echoed in life for you?
I grew up educated, supported, and being told I could do whatever I wanted if I worked hard enough, but I never understood what it meant to work hard. And that's what those years taught me. I mean, I remember you telling me you need to do, what was it? 40 appointments, and you'd sell $10,000. for your push. And I did 40 appointments and sold 8. And you looked at me, you're like, you're the first person I've talked to who did the appointment and didn't hit the number. And at that point I realized, I was going through the motions and I was checking boxes, but I wasn't focusing on the little things. I wasn't focusing on the things that had created such a successful program. I was thinking I knew better, right? And trying to do it my own way, which you can't fix something or you can't change something until you understand why it is the way it is. So it taught me that. It taught me bandwidth. I remember my first job after a sales job, I was like, what do I do with all this time? And like, people get like paid time off and weekends. And like, I was used to just working when the opportunity came. And I think it's so important to know where your work limit is and what you're made of. I'm not saying you should go there every day, but it's always for me, it's been really helpful to know that what I'm capable of.
Yeah. And obviously sales, in-home sales pushes you to the limit because there's always somebody doing more. There's always some competitive drive. And when I remember the girl before the woman I see in front of me now, the perfectionist challenge that you had to always be the best and compete at the highest level. It still drives you, and we're going to talk about that later, but you've had to grow and mature in that component of it. So for those people that are listening, that are new to sales, they're getting a lot out of this beginning part of this podcast because they're probably struggling with those things where, I had to have a conversation with my 13-year-old that, perfection, is the quest for perfection is going to slow you down in life. And because it kills progress. So how have you overcome your desire to just be the best at everything, accepting the fact that that's not always possible, to still be very productive in your work and your professional life?
That happened in bobsled. I found something that meant enough to me that I had to be vulnerable enough to fail and then get back up. I think that's really what it was. I think I was always trying to save face. I grew up with people telling me I could do great things. And I'm a hard worker and you're talented and you're smart. You're going to do great things. But when they talk about it like that, they don't talk about the path it takes to get there. It feels like, okay, when I graduate from Brown, there should be a golden ticket waiting for me. And that's just not the case. There's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, that's such a great, people, obviously the life that you lived, as you said, you've been told you've been great. You had fantastic parents, supportive, that put you in the right space in your education, that got you in the right school. You're athletically gifted, but all a little raw, kind of like in all of that. You can't teach the drive and the desire, which is why, you think about somebody had that from a third world country that has the different drive, but not they haven't had the resources to put them in situations to have the best coaching, the best education, and they still find themselves across the starting line from you, right? And at the end of the day, it's that dog in the fight, right? When you go to the hardest possible moment of your life and I survived that, I can get through this. Where a hard day for some people growing up is, dinner wasn't ready for them when they got home from school, right? So, all right, I want to talk about one thing before we get into the Olympics and the World Championship and all that stuff. You mentioned something about sales management, about dealing with adults who have mortgages, commission only. I think that gets overlooked a lot in sales management where, I have very few rules when it comes to things like recruiting and building teams, but the number one rule is you don't recruit and ruin somebody's life, right? You don't put somebody, just because you're a great recruiter and a great salesperson and they're making, 110 grand over there and your top rep's making 120, 50 grand over here. And you convince that person to leave that stable job for a dream. And then you don't have the right programs or process or systems or leadership ability to support them. Next thing you know, they were content, maybe not happy, but they weren't behind on their car payments. And then you convince them to come work for you. And now they're 3 months back, their mortgage is shit. They're fighting with their spouse, all because you were really successful and aggressive in recruiting them. So thinking back to your management piece of those commission-based individuals, for those listening, what advice do you give to those people who are running commission-based sales teams to support those people, to put them in the best position for success?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when I would hire people, I actually try and talk them out of it. I'm like, I need you to understand how hard this is. And I need you to know that if everything goes well and you are really willing to fight for it, you can make a lot of money. But know that this is a industry that there is no safety net. So you need to understand that. Second thing is, I always thought, if I'm going to hire somebody, I have to be willing to spend 8 hours a day with them every single day until I can get them up to speed. Now, obviously, there is a piece of ownership that they have to take, but if I'm not willing to continually meet them where they are, to bring out whatever greatness I think I'm seeing in them in this interview, or the reason I'm recruiting them, then I am doing myself a disservice, the organization and my other sales reps a disservice, right? Because it's going to take a lot of my time. But mostly I'm just, I'm a snake oil salesman to the person who I'm recruiting. And then the third thing is model. You have to be able to model what success looks like. If you can't do it yourself, because with ADP, I was hired as a sales manager. So every single night for the first 3 months after work, I would sit at my desk and I would find a new binder on a different system and a different program. And I would, write the model sales call out on note cards, repeat it back to myself, because I had to be able to do my sales rep's job better than they could, and they had a head start. And so I had no right being in that role if I wasn't willing to work as hard as my people.
You find yourself in Denver with ADT, right? So I think this is, I remember this part of your life when I kind of learned something was going on. But you're at Denver, you're out there, don't know anybody. You're at a CrossFit gym, you're working out, and kind of pick up the story, what happened, how you ended up in bobsled, because the Southern California Ivy League educated volleyball player didn't scream bobsled.
No, it did not. Still weird to me that I did that for so long. So I was in Denver working, and I had made some friends, and a good friend of mine had come back from a training camp. It was 2014. For context, her name is Jill Potter. She is now a rugby Olympian, but she was training for the 2016 Olympics. And then she'd gone to a camp in San Diego and had met a bobsledder who had just competed in Sochi, who wanted to try their hand at rugby. And this bobsledder ended up being my teammate in the Olympics. And I actually just got off the phone with her before this call. And she's always trying to recruit people. So she's trying to recruit the rugby players. And they're like, lady, we're trying to hit each other and go to Rio. We're not trying to go to the cold. But my friend comes back and she's like, hey, how much do you back squat? That's like the weirdest question.
No, before you give the answer, maybe tell everybody that you're 5'10", right? So okay. So how much did you back squat at the time?
375 pounds. Right. And then she walked away. I was like, okay. Then she came back. She's like, how much do you deadlift? And I was like, I don't know, like 425, 435. And she's like, okay. And then she comes back and she's like, can you sprint? I was like, Jill, like I haven't sprinted since high school and I'm 30 now. I guess maybe what's the deal? She goes, I think you should bobsled. And I was like, that's not even a real sport. That's like a 1990s Disney movie. Like, what are you talking about? I should bobsled. Who bobsled? So she explained she'd met this woman, medals, Olympics. And that was a time in my life where before ADT, I'd been unemployed for 7 months. And the perfectionistic mindset was stopping me from moving forward and getting a job, because I was like, I have to have the perfect title and the perfect company and the perfect mission, and I have to have the perfect pay rate. And finally, I was like, I need to go on every single opportunity, every interview that could possibly, get me in a position to be working and contributing to society and making money. And so I'd made a promise to myself to fully vet every opportunity that came to me. And so I was like, I'm going to do some quick research, and I'm going to quickly find that I can't be a bobsledder. So I found out that there was an Olympic training center an hour from me. And I was like, I didn't know there were training centers dedicated to Olympians. Like, that sounds cool. And for like $45, I could go down there, do the combine, do a little sprint, a little shot toss, and a jump. And then I could take a tour and eat in the cafeteria. And you know how much I love food. You can get me to do anything if you promise me a good meal. And I was like, I want to see how Olympians eat. So I go down there, check all the boxes. I buy a t-shirt and I'm like, that is the best behind the scenes Olympic experience I could ever ask for. I remember thinking, taking it all in, looking at these athletes, being like, one of these people could be at the Olympics someday, and I'm going to be able to say I knew them when. And then about 2 weeks later, I get invited to rookie camp.
So you tested at the center, and then they call you.
Then they called me 2 weeks later. They said, hey, congratulations. Welcome to rookie camp. We'd love for you to come out to Lake Placid and learn how to push a bobsled. It's not a simulator, but it's like a push track. So it's not a full, like you don't go down the whole track. You're just pushing, it comes back, pushing, comes back. And so I'm like, all right. At this point, I was like, I'm just going to keep going until they're like, ma'am, thank you so much for coming in. Can you get your old butt out of here? And that took 8 years and 2 hip labrum surgeries. So
So what happened at the rookie camp? You showed up and you pushed a sled, and how did they determine to ask you back for the next day?
Yeah, so I showed up, pushed a sled. At the beginning, I was terrible at it. I was terrified to because you have to fall into a thing that's gonna move, and so your brain's like, this is not gonna work well. I'm gonna land on my face, and I did a couple times. And then competition day came, and I was like, F that, I'm just gonna be an athlete, and I won. So I won rookie push camp. And the track athletes that had been training for this were probably pissed. So then you get invited to national push champ. I finished second behind Lauren Williams. For those who don't know, Lauren Williams is, I think, the first American woman to win a medal in both summer and winter Olympics. Then I went to team trials and made my first national team. Got to compete in my first world championships, finished 5th. And then from every season on, I kind of got the bobsled bug, and I had to try out for the team every year. So imagine if you had to interview for your job every year. That's what it's like being a Team USA athlete every year, even after you win a medal.
Yeah. So you make that first national team, and I remember I texted you, called you, we saw each other, and I'm like, hey, how do I buy tickets to the Olympics? Right? I just knew you. And so I think I bought my tickets 3 years in advance, or 3.5 years in advance. And I bought, I don't even know how many kids I had or how old they were at the time, but I bought 2 tickets for the Olympics were in Korea. Yeah. And next thing you know, 3 years and a quarter later, I'm like, well, shit, you're going to the Olympics. And Ann did not want to go. She's like, I'm not going to. I'm like, what? I got 2 tickets. I bought them 3 years ago. I don't even know how much I paid for them. She's like, I'm not going. So I literally post on social media. I'm like, hey, I got an extra ticket to the Olympics. Who wants to go? And shout out to Steven Anderson. I'll make sure I send you the link. Steven just pings me right away. He's like, I'll go, right? And so Steve and I go out to Pyeongchang for the Olympics. And obviously a good friend of ours, Anthony Garcia, met us out there. And I can tell you, Lauren, I have never been colder in my entire life. It was freaking freezing. And I had the thickest, most down jacket, and I'm like, how is the cold air getting through this? And you guys are in these lycra suits, pumped up on adrenaline. It wasn't easy going from, obviously there was some promise when you win rookie push camp that you come in second behind Lauren, was it Lauren Williams, right? Yep. Two Laurens. And then all of a sudden you're competing for this spot to be on the national team. Talk about some adversity. When did you know you were actually going to compete? Was it a year before, a week before, a day before?
When they named the team?
Yeah.
They named the team on January 13th, 2018.
And the Olympics were in February?
February, yeah.
Yep.
So about 3 weeks before the Olympics started.
And there's 2 teams that go, two sleds that race.
Yeah, so a country can have up to 3, but there's only 2 countries can have 3. So we'd only qualified 2. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so how many people were on the bobsled team? How many people got left behind?
I think it was at least 3 brakemen and 1 pilot who didn't qualify. So at least 4 people. So
4 other people trained just as long, just as hard as you. And who is the other athlete that was the track star that Lolo, right? That might have decided to I don't know the whole story there, but you have that. I remember that you called me and you're like, you called me several times during the process, like I freaking quit, right? Like like there was so much stress that, yeah. And then I'm like, don't quit. I got my tickets first, but don't quit. But just same emotions I dealt with you when you were a sales leader and a sales manager. Is like, it gets so much. And then this person, Lolo, who obviously is a tremendous athlete, was trying to decide if she was going to compete or what was going on there. Cause that was pretty chaotic for you.
Yeah. I mean, Lolo, just like Lauren had, they came back just as like, a lot of people come back. She competed in 2014 when we had 3 sleds in the Olympics with Jasmine Fenlater. They did a great job. Then she went back to track. And track didn't go exactly how she wanted it to. And so, there was another opportunity to go to the Olympics. And like, the Olympics is one of those things that once you've experienced it, there's nothing like it in the world. And, I don't blame her for, keep plugging away at it. And, I think if we would have had a third sled, she would have had a pretty good chance of being on that sled. She's an incredible athlete. I think this year she is the oldest athlete to go to U.S. Olympic trials for track and field, which like track and field and like women's gymnastics, I think might be the 2 hardest teams to make in the world.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe swimming too. Yeah.
And the World Championship was before the Olympics, or was it after?
So the way it works is every season, the World Cup tour is 8 stops of like just normal races. They're 1-day races. They're 2 heats in and out. And then every year that isn't the Olympics, we have World Championships, but that follows the same, I guess, pattern as the Olympics, where we have 2 days of competition, 2 runs apiece. And then the year of the Olympics, at least for bobsled and skeleton and luge, we don't have World Championships. For track and field, they're crazy and they'll still throw a World Championships after the Olympics. I'm like, I ain't doing nothing after the Olympics.
You're right.
So, yeah.
And I remember, I just want to paint a picture. You were training in Park City, so I drove up there and froze my ass off. And the one thing I noticed was when the truck came up with the sleds, all the athletes had to get the sleds out of the truck. And I was like, wait, where are all the people moving all the stuff for the athletes? It is not like, there's a true saying, right? Where champions aren't made in the ring, they're merely recognized, right? Paint the picture of what it's like being an Olympian. There's not a lot of people there picking up sleds and moving stuff for you, right? You're an amateur athlete. Sure, you have some resources, some training facilities and whatnot, but what is it like being an amateur athlete, but competing at a world-class level?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're a little bit of everything. You're a bit of a pit crew. You have to get in your training in. You don't make any money because Olympians are all broke. I think maybe like 60+% of Olympians and Paralympians actually live below the poverty line, because who's going to give you a job that pays you any kind of substantial money when you are training hours and hours a day and you're, on the road, right? Because we're in Europe for a normal season for 2 to 3 months. And then the Olympics, another month in, another country. And so we're moving sleds in on and off the truck. We are maintaining the sleds. We do have mechanics that help us a lot, but some of the little things we have to do ourselves. We are sanding the runner so that, for everybody that knows, those blades are on the bottom of the bobsled. They're not sharp. They are round. And our job is to get them so smooth that you can see a reflection out of them. And that can take hours, like 3-4 hours, depending on how scratched they are. And that all happens basically the night before the race, because you have your final training runs and then that night, and then maybe the next day or the day after you race. And so your capacity is really built in training. Yeah.
Right. So I remember going up to Park City for the tourist attraction of taking the bobsleds, and they pretty much, same track. At some point, you just don't go as high, I think. Me just puffing my chest out. I'm like, it's Olympian. And I dropped your name. They're like, yeah, we know Lauren. it's like, yeah, we know Lauren. It's like the same crew works that track, I guess, the year round forever. Yeah. They've been for a long time.
Yeah. One of the guys that's been there, he actually announces the winners at the end, and he's done it for like 9 Olympics. And so what's nice about being in Lake Placid or being Park City, I am not shiny. I am not special. I don't sit on a pedestal. These people are just my family. Those track workers are my family, because they make sure, preparing a track is a lot of work, especially with the weather being so unpredictable. And it's not like you can get a part for a track just at your local Lowe's. And so those people really become family, and they work tirelessly, shaving ice, shaping ice, building ice. It's ridiculous.
It's
the work
easy.
that they do.
We don't even know where to start. So post Olympics, right? I didn't prep you for this question, but post Olympics, what was the psychology, right? Like, obviously I am not a world-class athlete, but I did compete at a collegiate level. And I ran an Ironman at 42 and have dealt with some of the emotional things that happen. And I would just imagine competing in world championships and Olympics coming and there's some movies about this, right? Like sitting in the hotel room afterwards, after the adrenaline's done, you're like, shit, now what? Right? What kind of psychology or emotional strain did that put on you? And because that same thing happens in our industry where you work all year for a golden door and you win a golden door, you work all year to win in your company. And as soon as you win, there's like, you get home and you're in your shitty little apartment out in Tyler, Texas, and there's nobody there with a ceremony for you. There's no parade, right? It's like, I just spent all this time to try to win this award and nothing changes. So for you, what was the emotional psychology around coming home and going, yeah, I mean, there's obviously some speaking gigs and some showed up and, we met at the Mexican restaurant in Salt Lake City and you rolled your Olympic medal. And I'm like, that's right. Here we go. Olympic silver here in Red Iguana. So what, yeah, it was pretty good food. Not LA Mexican food, but it was for Utah. It was pretty good. So walk me through the emotional trauma that you went through psychology wise.
First of all, you have to add a great broomball player to your resume. I'll just leave it at that.
I think I might still have the bruise.
Probably. Yeah, it's funny because for some reason I thought I was going to be immune to this, like they call it the Olympic blues, this depression that you go into after. And I think it's because I went into it with such gratitude. When you don't set out to go to the Olympics and you try out for something as a joke and you end up at the Olympics, I was just like, I'm going to go win, lose or draw. I'm just going to be so honored to represent my country, so honored to show the world what I've been working on, and just so grateful for this experience that, 99.9999% of the world will never be able to experience. And that just wasn't the case. And I think it really hit me when I realized I was at a crossroads. I could stop bobsledding and go do something. But at that time, I still had no clarity on what I was meant to do. Cause the only thing I was good at was sales. And I felt like, after ADT, I'd come across a string of companies that just morally weren't great, programmatically weren't great, product weren't great, customer service, it just wasn't great. And I was just I just felt very lost. And I actually started bobsledding because I was like, well, if I quit my 6-figure job and I tell people that I'm trying to go to the Olympics, they won't be so hard on me. But in actuality, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna make that team. That's ridiculous. I'm 30. And so when I finally started training again, you go back with the understanding of how hard you have to work. And that's really daunting. And so I would be out training and just burst into tears out of nowhere. I'd be sitting there sobbing. And I was sobbing because I was proud of myself. I was sobbing because it was over. I worked for 3.5-4 years for 3 minutes and 30 seconds on a track. And if you count the amount of time I spent pushing a bobsled, it was maybe 30 seconds. And so it was just like you said, this high, and then it was just over. And it was kind of did it really happen? What happens now? I'm an Olympian forever, but I don't feel any different, but people are treating me different, but I don't really have any more opportunities than I did before. And I don't really know what I want to do with my life. And I don't know if I can work that hard again, because if I had to really think about it, I was probably burned out by that point, because, learning to bobsled is like drinking out of a fire hose. And because I was on the national team my very first year and every year after, I learned a lot, but there was just so much pressure because I was competing with women who'd already been to the games, who'd already had medaled. And the last thing you want to be in a sport, in a sled, in an organization is the weakest link, So it was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, and we're going to probably talk about what's coming up for you. Now you did co-author a book, or is it a book or is it a manual? It's
a workbook. It's got some activities and some theories and some fun anecdotes from 2 Olympians in very different sports.
Yeah. Right. It's is it distance run or middle distance running?
Middle distance runner, yeah, Shannon Robury, who competed, I think, in 3 Olympics, and most recently just found out that she might get upgraded to an Olympic medal from 2012. So big stuff for her, which is great.
And then she gets to go. Did they hand it? She to go in 2000 whatever, and get the medal like they just did that for the figure skaters, right?
For the figure skaters, yeah, they waited 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's called Medalist Mindset, and it's the 2 of you that put together a workbook just on working through the mindset of being, I'm assuming, being a champion or being successful.
Yeah, it's an idea of like, I always say, I feel like anybody and everybody can have their own Olympic moment. I really do. I believe that if you have the right support system, circumstances, and drive, and you find something that you're passionate about, you can have your own Olympic moment. And I mean, like parenting. Like you say, you're crushing the dad game. That's amazing. You can have it in a relationship, at work, in the gym, maybe like you're struggling with a back squat or a power clean. I just feel like there's opportunities for greatness everywhere. And so the book goes through 5 keys. It's goals, foundation, mindset, routine, and team. There's nothing fancy in it. It's very basic, but it's basically like, what are the little things that you can do to put yourself in the best position to win?
Yeah, and you just said something that's really important. It's like having your Olympic moment in something. You watch little kids like you're videoing them and they accomplish something so simple like putting a ball into a trash can, and how they celebrate because they have no perspective. They're like, I just did that. And every time I do something like, change the dryer vent, I send Ann a text message of Tom Hanks and Castaway. It's like, I made fire, right? Like, it's like, I just had my Olympic moment. I took out the battery of her car and I put it back in and I fixed a car. I'm like, I made fire. It's an Olympic moment of such a small level. But then we're all surrounded by friends or people, acquaintances that are doing things at a astonishing level, whether it's the money they're making or the recognition they have, or the success of their business. And we tend to compare ourselves with them. And I know you and I were catching up, and my career has led me down a bunch of different paths. And, I always told myself that, I got married at 38, first kid at 40, and I worked. I don't remember my 20s because I grinded. I literally worked, right? And halfway through my 30s until I met Ann and we started dating, and then we get married and we have kids. And now, like, what is the one thing I want to be world class at right now? And that's being a dad, right? That is like we're 24/7 in our family about being parents that support our kids. We do homework with them every night. I was doing homework this morning. We don't get a night off for athletics, and we don't push our kids to, our 13-year-old Jackson, he's pushing back a little bit about how much schoolwork and stuff. So we've dialed it back. Everything his choice now. Hey, Cooper, I got to go hit. You want to come? Well, I don't want to hit today. Can I hit tomorrow, Dad? Yeah, no problem. Right. And so we're doing our best not to overbear children, but we've had conversations like my wife and I didn't have the same opportunities that our kids have to go out and be great. And we're trying to, like you said, what am I going to do with all this time? And we're trying to make their childhood so impactful and so powerful that when they get to college, it's easy. When they get their first job, it's easy. When they get a first hard job, they're like, this is hard. This is easy compared to how much fun and work I did in my. So anyway, back to being an Olympic moment. It's hard for me to watch social media and see people succeeding. I'm like, yeah, I used to be there. I used to be at that level, succeeding at, but you know what? I know I'm winning at being a dad. And so I love the concept of medalist mindset. I do have to ask you though, how are you using that right now, that mindset? How are you self-managing you through the period of life you're going through right now?
Yeah, I have a lot of things going on. I have a job that I really love, that I have a good amount of autonomy in. I'm very ADD, so there's always something else that I want to learn. Right now, my passion project is learning about day trading. And so what I'm really trying to do.
No, I interviewed Jeremy Lieber this week. Uncommon Education. It's probably going to come out right before this one. I joined his mastermind, day trading mastermind, and you and I should catch up off camera on that. So shout out to Jeremy. Hopefully you guys saw that podcast probably the week before this one. But anyway, so yeah, right. The ADD in us is in fact, you say that I'm going to go get myself tested because I literally think but I never, ever, ever. Okay. Well, I didn't know. Never.
You have it.
That's so funny.
I didn't know either. JP, I didn't find out until I was running my Cutco office. I was like putting sample kits together and getting ready for training. And I kind of like came out of a fog and I had binders started over there. I had sample kits started over there. I had a few chairs set out. I had some of the paperwork over there. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And that's when I got tested. And athletes, it's tough because the adrenaline that you get from working out and pushing yourself really kind of levels you out. And then when you don't have that anymore, it's just like, also we live in this social media culture where we're stimulated all the time and it just makes it worse.
Well, I've been like, I always had a lot on my plate, but recently I'm like, there's something, I don't want to say I don't finish things, but I'm like, why does it feel like I'm always, anyway, so we'll have that conversation later. So let's talk about Posse, the job, the autonomy. Let's talk about, it's a great organization you work for. Just give them a shout out, tell them who they are, what they do, and why you love it there.
Yeah, so Posse started in the 80s. There was this brilliant kid from New York City who went to college. I actually think he went to Brown, funny enough. He dropped out, came home, and they said, what happened? He said, I never would have dropped out of college if I'd had my Posse with me. And my boss, who was 23 at the time, was like, what a fantastic idea. What if we put a cohort of kids together and sent them to college? So if you're from the Bronx, New York, and you end up in the middle of Vermont, you're less likely to pack up and go home. So Posse is a diversity initiative that doesn't screen for race or need. We're looking for intrinsic leadership ability. We're screening for merit. And so we work with public schools around the country. These kids get nominated. They go through a very, very rigorous interview process. And then from the 17,000 nominations we get every year, we send about 1,000 kids to college. We have 67 university partners. Some of them take multiple posses, and the posses are 10. And they provide full tuition scholarships. So these kids have won $2.24 billion in scholarships. They graduate at rates of over 90%. And the whole point is to create this network of leaders that better represents our country and has experience in handling complex issues. Yeah, it's fantastic. My boss won a MacArthur Genius Grant Award in 2007 for the concept. Like, I get to say I work for a genius. Pretty cool.
That's two geniuses you've worked for in your life, right?
It's funny. That was exactly as soon as I said it, I was like, he's going to say something about him being a genius. And JP, I've told you this time and time again, and I'll say it for your listeners. I wouldn't be where I am without you. And I'll stop there because I'll start crying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And anytime in LA, I'm going to go swing by to get fed by your neighbors. Bring your parents food. All right, let's talk a little bit about how I think you can provide value to the door-to-door space, right? Our listeners work for companies that are constantly looking for motivation, inspiration. And I know you've done quite a bit of speaking, just some of the bigger companies I remember seeing is like Deloitte or LinkedIn. I think you were a sponsored athlete for the company here in Utah, which I always forget, DoTerra, right? So walk us through I'm assuming you do keynotes or maybe some leadership breakouts. Walk us through what you provide for sales organizations. I think it's something along the lines of everything I learned from a bobsled or something like that. So what is your theme that you instill in companies when you go speak?
You can't show up to a company and be a bobsledder and not tell the story of how you became a bobsledder. And that's always a fun story to weave in there. And I think I tell that part of the story because as an Olympian, people like to put you on a pedestal. And if my story doesn't resonate with you, then the concepts I have to teach you aren't going to resonate with you, because it's very easy to say like, oh, I get Lauren could do it, but I'm not Lauren. I'm not an Olympian. So, I have to humanize myself a bit and tell the fun parts and the tough parts and the parts where, I wanted to give up more than I wanted to succeed. But really, it's like what I learned and why I'm successful is because I learned to focus on the basics, the little things, the things that get you to success also will sustain your success. When I was selling Cutco knives, my close was The Homemaker Plus 8 is $849. I can't believe it was that cheap back then. But you probably don't want a whole set, do you?
Right.
That's how I closed.
Sell them off.
And I remember, right? And the very first time I was like, you know what, Lauren, I'm going to go in there. I'm just going to read the book. I'm do it. I said, would you like to buy this set today? She goes, sure. I was like, oh my God, I effed it up so bad. And so I really dialed down into basics. And basics are to be a student of your business, right? It doesn't matter what level you've gotten to. You can always learn from the people that are better than you and the people who are just starting, because sometimes talking to the rookies reminds you of the things that you used to do that you've then stopped doing because you think you're too good for it. Other thing is you have to be willing to fall flat on your face. And it's only failure if you just flat out give up and you don't learn anything from it. So you got to be vulnerable and being willing to put yourself out there. I talk about asking for help. Nobody can read your mind. Your boss can't read your mind. Customer can't read your mind. The person that you know has all those leads, but you're afraid to ask, they can't read your mind. So you have to be vulnerable there too. And also people, I found out that people really enjoy being part of someone else's success.
Yeah.
And if you share your goals and you share what you're trying to accomplish, you will be amazed how many people come out of the woodworks to help you. Those are the kind of the concepts I talk about.
Yeah. I just had a flashback to asking for help. And, one of the things that I don't know how I learned it is it's just probably because of time. At the end of my day, the high achievers, we're a little bit sick, right? Like our day doesn't end. We're like, everybody's sleeping. We're like, okay, we got to catch up on, so I'd be in bed. And you probably remember this. I mean, the text would come out, you up? Yeah, you up? Right? And there was like 5 or 6 of us, right? My wife's like, who you texting? I'm like, Lauren, right? She'd elbow me. And Jenna, she'd elbow me, right? There was always, right? Yeah, exactly. And I bring those things up because that was my accidental way of just checking in with the top sales rep. And that enabled you to ask for help. That enabled you to feel connected to me as a leader. I didn't know it at the time. In today's world, it's sometimes inappropriate to text people late at night for work. But in the sales world, I just was like, okay, I dealt with problems all day. Now I got to go talk. I got to check in with the people that aren't my problems, but they're my producers. And I would check in with everybody, and we're all doing the same thing. We're all planning out our next day. We're all thinking about what success looks like and what winning. And it's like, there's 11 more days in the contest. Like, are we going to hit we were all thinking about the same thing. And so what you just said about asking for help, there are always people that are willing to answer that late night text, or that late night, Instagram message about, hey, do you have a minute to pick your brain? You'd be surprised. And very rarely are you're going to have 2 types of high achievers. One that are so busy that they turn their phone off because they need to get their life under control. And then the rest of us that are, the quickness of response, it's like 11:01. Then the response goes out 11:30 seconds. So like, well, I was staring at my phone looking for something else to do. So, hey, let's kind of wrap things up here with, you surprised me when we got on the call. I said, what's life like? And you're like, I'm going back to bobsled. And I'm like, basically, why the hell are you doing that? Right. So talk to us about, again, that's gotta be some emotional stuff you're dealing with to want to go put your body through that. So talk to us on why the decision to go back, I'm older than you, but obviously people can do the math. If you got into bobsled at 30, you competed in 18 at 34, carry the 1, right? There's going to be a 4 in your birthday. And so how old would you be at the time of the next Olympics?
I would be 42.
42 years old. And you just started training, and you're just off some decimal points here on what it takes to be an Olympian. So walk us through your decision, where you are in life as a 40-year-old woman, world champion, silver medalist, saying, I'm going to go put my body, my life, my mind, and the stress and the politics of the U.S. Olympic Committee and all that stuff. Why are you doing it?
A number of things. 2022 did not end the way I wanted it to. I found out, I'd been having a lot of pain in my hip, my back, everywhere. And I found out in 2021, after squatting and my back went out, that I had 2 torn hip labrums. And at that point, it was too close to the games to do anything about it. So it was kind of like PRP, rehab. tape and hope for the best. And then it just got so bad I couldn't generate power. So I watched the 2022 Olympics from my hospital bed, which is far worse than competing in it. Not because I was sad to have missed it, but it's terrible to watch something that you have no impact over and know how hard your friends have worked and want the best for them, and then it not always go the way you wanted it.
And I don't think I watched the 2022 bobsledding. So
that's because you are a true friend. You're like, Lauren ain't in it, I'm not watching it.
Yeah. Did we medal? What was the outcome?
We did. We got gold and silver in the monobob and bronze in 2-man. Gosh, I hope that I got that right. Sorry, Alana, if I got that wrong. So there was that aspect of it. And then there was this thing, I went to Paris this summer.
I saw that.
I just realized this was part of it, because after 2022, I was like, okay, if I can get healthy, I kind of want to go back. I need to take some time to like mentally relax and like get myself together. My dad is having some health issues. He's now fine. I needed to start making some money to go back to making money, and I needed to heal. And I always thought, like, if I can heal and get back, that would be great. I didn't know if it was going to be possible. It took 2.5 years for my hips to heal. And even now, like, I'm healed for a normal person. I'm not healed for an athlete, right? So there's a lot of things I still need to work through. So that was one thing. And then when I went to Paris, I saw all these athletes get a moment when they got to say goodbye to their sport. And I never got to say goodbye to my sport. My last competitive run in a bobsled was like a random training day in Winterberg, Germany, where I knew it didn't go well. And I looked at my pilot and I said, it's been an honor to fly with you. And this is probably it for me, because I don't think I'm going to get selected for the 2022 games. And then I've just missed it every single day. Every single day since January 2022, I've missed bobsled. One of my Olympic friends a number of my friends have tried to go back, and it doesn't always work out. And, I asked her why. She's like, it's really cool to be the best in the world at anything. And once you've experienced something like that, it's really hard to let go of. And then, most people who do a sport, when you're done playing professional basketball, you're done figure skating, you're done golfing, you can go do that whenever you want. You can't just like hop in a bobsled. And, for me, I akin my perfection. My part of it is I'm a brakeman. I push the sled, I sit down, and then I become equipment, and then it's all the pilot show, and I'm just there to not F it all up. It's kind of like sitting on a golf range and perfecting your golf swing. There's something therapeutic about it. I'm not a religious person, but it's a spiritual experience for me. And I just missed the process of trying to show up as the best version of myself. And there's just not a lot of people in my current world, and then these are fantastic people, that enjoy pushing themselves to a limit that seems a little bit crazy for most. And I miss that too. So there's just a lot going on. I have no idea if my body will hold up. I have no idea if in a year I'll still feel the same way. But I do know if I don't try, I'll never forgive myself.
Truth. Where in 2026 is the Olympics?
Are you going to be going?
Well,
Milan.
Is it Milan?
Milan.
Italy?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Of course I'm in. I got connections.
I know. The caveat is if they don't finish the track, they're going to probably do the competition stateside. It might be Lake Placid, which is still an amazing area, but it's not Milan.
Well, I'm rolling deep this time, right? Ann can
so that might be more cost effective.
Yeah, well, Ann can stay home if she wants, but I'm rolling deep. The boys are coming. The boys are coming, right? So Auntie Lauren's going to be, if she's there, they're coming. All right. So how do people get a hold of you? They want you to come to you do, I know you do a lot of Zoom training as well, and a lot of speaking, a lot of traveling around Posse. And I think that's great work. How do they get a hold of you? What's your handle?
Yeah. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Lauren Gibbs on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, LAGibbs84. Just know there'll probably be a ton of panda videos and random stuff in my stories. My ADD is expressed in my Instagram stories. And then I guess I can give an email, Lauren Gibbs at possefoundation.org.
There we go.
Lauren Gibbs at possefoundation.org.
Lauren, it was fantastic catching up. Hopefully people in the D2D world truly value what it takes to be a world champion and Olympic silver medalist. We'll catch you all guys next week.